All right. So yesterday I told you that I was going to post a resume lecture to kind of go along with the PowerPoints. My intention was to record the lecture that I gave during the seated class. I got about 5 minutes into the lecture and realized I hadn't actually recorded it, hadn't started recording. So I'm going to record one this morning. It should be fairly short. Hopefully you guys check this out so that you kind of know what we're expecting with these resumes. So without any further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and get started here. So this is the resume assignment. You must have your resumes up to date as possible by the time that they are due. This means your final resume, right? Now, it's going to help if you have your rough draft up to date too. But by the time I get your final draft, it should be you should be willing to hand that to an employer and have them check it out. Okay. You should be proud to hand it to an employer. Make sure that it is a professional looking resume and that you are giving due attention to detail. Okay, there's nothing worse than interviewing somebody or talking to somebody and they say, I am an extremely detail oriented person. And then you look at their resume or their cover letter or whatever document they're handing you, and there's a ton of errors in it. That automatically tells me you're not detail oriented at all. Okay, so just a reminder, this is a 100-point assignment. Most of our assignments are 100 points. So you will miss 10% of your final grade if you don't turn in a resume. Okay, so if you don't turn in a rough draft, you're missing 50 points. All right, so turn them in on time. I've had some issues with a couple of students turning things in late and then expecting the points for them. That's not how this works. We adhere to the syllabus in this class. This is going to be very similar to what you see when you get into a professional environment. They're going to adhere to their policies and procedures, and we're going to do the same with the syllabus. And that, even if I make a mistake, I would expect you guys to hold my feet to the fire over that as well. But the syllabus is clear. No late assignments are accepted. If you turn something in late, you're going to get a 0 on it. Okay. Now you can use your late pass on that assignment, and all will be forgiven. But you only get one late pass. Outside of that, no late assignments are going to be accepted. Okay, so make sure you turn this in on time. Okay. You can ignore this last bullet point here that says you're required to attend the Accounting Resume Madness. You guys are not required to attend the Accounting Resume Madness. I would prefer that you attend it if possible. I would prefer that you go in person or that you schedule a virtual appointment with them. Because the reason I prefer that is because there are actual employers there giving you critique and feedback on your resumes, not just me, who is an instructor, and saying, well, this is what I would expect in a resume. You've got employers like BKD and Abacus and all these places that are saying, hey, when we look at resumes, this is what we like to see. Okay, that's why I would prefer that you guys do that. That's your first choice. If you can set up a virtual appointment through Handshake, email the Career Center, call the Career Center, or just show up tomorrow at 10 a.m. From 10 to 3 on the second floor of Glass Hall, and they're having the Resume Madness. Okay, that's what I would prefer that you do over sending your resume to myself or Lane or Anna, the writing lab. That should be your last resort for this. Your first option should be to do something with the Career Center. Have the Career Center review your resumes, okay? If for whatever reason you can't, and I can't think of any great reasons why you couldn't email a copy of your resume to the Career Center and have it reviewed, we will critique your resumes for you, but I would prefer that you go through the Career Center, okay? So communication, as you guys know, this class, Accounting 300, we focus on the importance of communication in accounting. There's always that, the stereotypical accountant is a guy who sits, at a desk and never talks to anybody. He just does his work, never talks. That's not true. You're going to spend a lot of your time communicating with others. Even if it's written, there's still going to be communication. So we focus very heavily on communication in this class, okay? That's why I'm having you guys do all these forum board posts. That's why I'm setting up these meet and greets, every once a month so that we're all communicating with each other. We can get to know each other. getting to know each other, developing these friendships and these connections, this network, your networking starts in this class, is very important. Okay. Being a good communicator provides a significant competitive advantage, in my opinion. Okay. Being able to do the accounting work, being good with the debits and the credits and all that stuff is great, and that's going to get you pretty far. But if you can be a good communicator and have those accounting skills, you're gonna succeed at a higher level than most other people. Okay. So typically when you're getting hired based on what you know and what you can do, right? So we want your resumes to state those things. You want to clearly state what do you know and what can you do, okay? In the accounting program, you start getting recruited very, very early, much earlier than other majors here in the College of Business, right? So you guys in Accounting 300 are already being recruited. You're already being interviewed for internship positions, and you're not graduating with your undergrad for another year and a half, probably, maybe 2 years. And that's your undergrad. You've still got to get a master's degree in most cases if you're wanting to sit for the CPA, right? So it's very important that early on we have a professional, complete resume, okay? Now, I know you guys did these resumes in 286, and I realize that a lot of you have planned on turning those in as your rough draft, and that's fine. Take that, get it critiqued, turn it in as your rough draft, whatever you want to do. Just know that we're probably going to tear it apart, okay? Because the resume you made in 286 is not going to be the kind of resume you want to submit for, in most cases. Some of you may have great resumes. I don't know. I haven't seen them yet. But the resumes that you submitted in Management 286 are not going to be the kinds of resumes we're looking for in this class, right? Accounting professionals are looking for very specific things on a resume, okay? And we will go over those things. So that is why we're doing resumes in this class. You may tell yourself, well, this is just basically what I've done already. It is and it isn't. Yes, you've made a resume. No, it's not a resume you're going to want to use to try and get an accounting job in most cases, okay? So the Career Center is a good resource. Here is the contact information for them. There's always another Accounting Resume Madness in the fall. So just because you've done this one doesn't mean you're done and never have to look at your resume again. You want to look at your resume constantly. You want to be updating it consistently. I have to resubmit my resume here at Missouri State once a year, okay? And it's got to be updated. That means I am constantly looking at my resume, fixing things, making adjustments. It's a living, breathing document. You need to be aware of that. So next fall, before the Accounting Career Fair, because the College of Business holds an accounting-specific career fair that is only for accounting majors. Nobody else gets to go, okay? They will hold another Resume Madness event where you can go and have your resume critiqued. Again, at that point, you should have added more things to your resume, right? So this is an excellent resource for you guys. Utilize it, okay? So traditionally, accounting firms recruit in the fall. Like I said, we have that accounting career fair in the fall. However, due to the COVID pandemic and all that good stuff, they got about a year behind on recruiting. So now they're recruiting almost all year round. And that's why we switched things around a bit and went from week 7 to week 5 with the resumes so that you guys would have resumes ready before the Career Expo, okay? So you're going to want to get familiar with Handshake. Sign up on Handshake if you haven't. That's where you're going to find positions that are open for leadership programs, internships, GA-ships, full-time jobs. You're going to apply for on-campus interviews there. So with like BKD in March is doing on-campus interviews, right? You're going to apply for those interviews through Handshake. You can also post your resume to Handshake, okay? And that allows employers to just look at your resume and contact you if they've got a position open up that they think you might be a good fit for. So Handshake, very important for you guys to utilize. When I was in school, it was Bear Tracks, I think, and I was always checking it, always checking it. Even though I already had a full-time job, I was always looking to do something different and continue my education and my career through new jobs. So just utilize it. It's a great resource for you guys, okay? So when recruiters ask you about your graduation date, they're probably referring to your master's graduation date. Okay. However, Missouri has moved to 120 hours for you to be eligible to sit for the CPA exam. So they may also be asking about your undergrad graduation date at this point as well. That's an amazing thing for you guys for a number of reasons. If anybody's got questions about why that's such a great thing, contact me. I'll explain it to you. Okay. However, you still need 150 hours in order to actually use the credentials or use that CPA title, right? So at 120, you sit, you pass all 4 of them. Well, you still have to wait until you've got 150 hours before you can call yourself a CPA. Okay. So once you're admitted to your graduate program, you need to add that to your resume with an anticipated graduation date. So, Master's of Accountancy, expected graduation date, May 2024, whatever your expected graduation date is. If you're not admitted yet, but you do plan to apply, you can use an objective statement. As you'll see here in a couple of slides, I don't really recommend an objective statement. That's something that you can discuss with them. Likely that's a question that'll come up during your interview. Hey, do you have plans for graduate school? Okay. So one thing you might want to include, because some of you guys may run into an issue where you've got a lot of white space, right, on your resume. For where you're at in your career and your education, that's kind of expected. They're expecting that, so that you don't have as much experience as most people, okay? So one thing you can do is you can include the coursework that you've completed or the coursework you're currently taking, okay? That's important. It can be helpful for them to know where you're at in your accounting education, what you should know at this point about accounting, okay? So, for example, if you're in Accounting 321, say, I'm in individual income tax accounting. I am in corporate taxation. I am a part of the VITA program. I am in an auditing class right now, right? Right now, I would imagine none of you are in auditing. Very few of you are probably in 321. Most of you, I would imagine, are in 301 or 302. So, I mean, that's crazy to me. You guys are being recruited and you don't know really anything about accounting yet. I mean, you've been through the intro class and you've been through 4 weeks of 301, but that's about it. So it's amazing to me that they recruit that early, and that's why these resumes, not the general business resume that you did for 286, that's why these resumes are so important for you guys, okay? So you have to use a grammatically correct resume. You have to use those correct spelling, correct punctuation, correct mechanics. It's so important. Like I said earlier, this third bullet point down here is what I was talking about earlier. If you are in an interview with an employer and you tell them I am detail oriented, and they look down at your resume and they pick out 3 spelling mistakes or punctuation or mechanical errors right off the bat, they know you're not detail oriented, and that is going to hurt you. It's going to hurt your chances of getting that internship. Make sure you are grammatically correct, mechanically correct in your resume, okay? Attention to detail is it's one of the most important skills an accountant can have. Okay, I mean, think about it. If you are auditing and you're turning in work papers with tons and tons of error in them consistently, you're not going to make it very far in the world of auditing. Okay, you're in charge, or your senior, or your manager, or whoever is reviewing your work papers is going to get sick of having to send you notes and corrections constantly. Now, it's always expected that you're going to have notes on work papers. I don't want you to think, if you're interested in auditing, everybody gets notes on work papers constantly, but making the same little mistakes over and over and over, that's when they know you don't have attention to detail, right? So, such an important skill for accountants. Make sure you are working on that now, okay? So, for the resume assignment, the sections that are required, you need a heading with your contact information. That's your name, your email address, your phone number, your physical address, okay? Those have to be on your resume. You need to list the education that you have and any relevant experience, okay? Optional sections, skills, activities that you've participated in college, and awards and achievements that you've gotten in college, okay? We'll talk about each of these here in a second. So, the heading. Here is an example. This is what the header on my resume looks like. This is literally the header on my resume, okay? the line is adjusted on my actual resume. It looks a little off here, but you can see I keep it to 2 lines because I need the space in my resume. You guys may not, so maybe 3 lines is acceptable for you guys. It eats up, a portion of that white space. It's still an efficient way to use that white space, right? I like it on 2 lines. I've got my physical address where they can send me mail if they need to, or they can, whatever they use your physical address for. It's usually to send you mail, okay? HR stuff, insurance stuff, things like that. My phone number, and then a professional email. Okay? Not gamerguy420@yahoo.com, okay? That is not acceptable. You do not want to have to explain to an employer why your email is gamerguy420. My recommendation would be use your first name, your middle initial, and your last name at whatever email service you use. Okay, so keep that in mind. What you don't want in the heading is any of these other kind of identifying demographics: age, sex, race, religion, marital status, national origin. One thing you don't want to do in a resume anywhere is include hyperlinks. No hyperlinks in a resume, okay? Think about it. They're looking at your resume physically in front of them. They can't click on a hyperlink in a physical piece of paper, right? So it just makes sense. No hyperlinks in your resumes, okay? Objective statement here. General rule, do not use one. This is something that is more appropriate for a cover letter, okay? This is something you're going to want to include in a cover letter. However, like I said, if you do need to explain to potential employers that you've got plans for graduate school, the CPA exam, something like that, then it would be okay to use probably a single line, not a whole chunk paragraph like I see on a lot of students' resumes. When they turn in rough drafts, they'll have an entire paragraph for an objective statement. Your objective when you're handing in a resume is to get a job. They know that. Okay? You don't need to tell them that. They know you're trying to get a job. Okay? So, general rule, do not use an objective statement. However, if you feel like you need to explain to them that you have plans for graduate school or the CPA exam or something like that, okay, use it, but try to keep it to a single line. Don't eat up that valuable space in your resume with an objective statement that is simply, I'm trying to get a job in the long run, okay? So, education. This is an example of a very simple education. This is the education portion of my resume, okay? So, Bachelor's of Science in Accounting, Missouri State University. Master's of Accountancy, Missouri State University, the date you graduated, okay? And I think mine's got a little, maybe an extra space between the December and 2019, but I think I did that so that everything was pretty square, okay? What you don't want to include in your education, degrees you plan on pursuing, but you're not currently accepted in. So if you plan on getting a Master's of Accountancy, but right now you're just a junior in your first semester of your junior year, don't include the Master of Accountancy. You haven't even been accepted into the program yet, okay? Don't include anything about your high school education. Here is the assumption that employers are making, and they're correct. You're in college, you're applying for an internship or a full-time position that is in the end going to require a 4-year degree. You have been through high school, and you did well enough in high school, you got into a college program. You don't need to include your high school education, okay? This other one is important for right now, for these internship positions. If your GPA is below a 3.0, do not include it in your education, okay? If it is above a 3.0, include it in your education, okay? Include that in your education portion. I don't include it anymore because I've got 20 years of work experience. My GPA doesn't matter, okay? They're not asking me what my GPA was for, I don't even remember what my GPAs were at this point. I would have to literally go look them up. You guys, I would imagine, know your GPAs because there are certain requirements, right, for you to graduate, okay? So include your GPA if it's a 3.0 or higher. Do not include it if it's a 3.0 or lower, okay? One thing you can do is if your field of study, if your major CPA, so if your GPA is in the accounting program is over a 3.0, include that, but make sure that you label it major, okay? So that they know that this is only the School of Accountancy. This is not my overall cumulative GPA, okay? All right, so relevant experience. Here is an example of what the experience, a portion of the experience section of my resume looks like, okay? I've just got bold headers, and then each job that I had within that company is italicized and underlined, and then I label them, and then I've got bullet points for each one, okay? Notice I've kept the bullet points to a single line. I think that makes things cleaner, easier to read, right? Try to keep your bullet points to a single line. You can always go back and look and remove words that aren't necessary, split something into 2 bullet points, whatever you need to do, but try to keep your bullet points to a single line, okay? You'll notice that I said up here I've got a parentheses that says additional experience available on request. And it's because I do not have my entire work history listed on my resume. I have the most current. So, there are jobs that I did at Mercy that are not listed on my resume. But if they wanted to know about them, they know. All they have to do is ask me. I can explain what I did. Okay. So, do not include weak skill descriptions like greeted customers at door, answered phones, listened carefully, right? You want to use strong action verbs, and that's that list that I provided you guys in the week 5 content folder. That is a list of words that you can use. You don't want to overuse the same word, but that list of action verbs, those are going to be strong words, strong skill words, strong action words that you can use in your resume. Okay, they really help it to stand out. So skills, and let's talk about this for a second, because there's one on here I don't like, but I know you've probably been told to include it in your resumes before. So let's start with the do not includes. Do not include in your skills weak skills like I'm a good listener, I'm hardworking, I'm reliable, I can show up on time, things like that. Those are not skills, okay? Those are expectations from your employer, okay? I show up on time. Well, yeah, good. This is an adult, grown-up, professional job. You should be showing up on time. I expect you to show up on time. And if you're not, then you're not going to be a part of this company for very long, okay? That is their expectation. I can use Excel. I can use Word. I can use Outlook. I can use PowerPoint. Great. You've got a college education. You should be able to use those things. Those are an expectation from me, okay, as an employer, right? You also want to try and stay away from very specific skills like can embed an Excel table into a Word document. Great, but that's really specific, okay? Now, you can get specific with like, I have a certification in Microsoft Office works, okay? That's great. That's like, this first point here over on skills and examples of what to include. It says proficient in Microsoft Office. I hate that. I think that's an expectation. At this point, you should be proficient in all things Microsoft, right? You've been using it your entire, especially you guys. I wasn't using things like Word until I was in high school. It didn't become popular. It didn't become something that was being used consistently until I was a freshman in high school. Shoot, when I was a freshman, I still had to take a typing class so that they could teach us how to type. I would imagine you guys don't have a typing class anymore in high school. But anyways, those are just expectations. However, I left it in here because if you do have a certification in Microsoft Excel or Microsoft Word, those are actually valuable. Those are things that have cost you a significant amount of money. You spent a significant amount of time, and the exams for those things, the tests that they use to make sure that you are actually what they call proficient in Excel, because what you think is proficient and what Microsoft thinks is proficient, believe me, they're two very, very, very different things, okay? If you took the proficiency exams for Microsoft Excel, you would have a hard time with it. I would have a hard time with it, and I consider myself a fairly advanced user of Excel. But anyways, yeah, I don't want to harp on that too much, but don't just put you're good at Excel. If you're going to put Excel or you're going to put Word or something in your skills list, make sure it's for a special purpose, like you've got a certification in it, Okay. You want to say something like you have academic experience with accounting information system softwares like IDEA or XBLR and all that good stuff. That you've used accounting software before in an academic setting. Okay. If you've used it at work, those are softwares that not everybody uses, and it's not an expectation to be proficient in them. Okay. Not everybody uses IDEA software, but if you've used it at work to help audit, perfect. Put it in there. This last point here under skills, I think, is very, very important. If you are fluent in a second language, if you are bilingual or trilingual, multilingual, include that in your resume. They love that. They love it. Okay. They may run into a situation someday where they need somebody who is fluent in Spanish, and they'll go, oh, yep, okay, I know who is fluent in Spanish or fluent in Korean or whatever. Okay. So I will warn you, do not include it if you are not fluent in it. Don't say, that I can speak casual Spanish. I understand casual Spanish, conversational Spanish. Very different than being fluent. Okay. So if you are not fluent in Spanish, or not just Spanish, but if you are not fluent in another language, do not include that. Okay. You need to be fluent. For example, my wife is Korean. She is fluent in Korean. She grew up speaking Korean. When she is with her mom, they don't speak English. They only speak Korean, which means by proxy and by being around it, I understand Korean. I know what they're talking about most of the time. I can't speak it. I don't try to hold conversations with my wife in Korean. Okay? I would never put on my resume that I'm fluent in Korean, because the instant they sat me with somebody who was fluent in Korean, I'd have no idea what was going on. Okay, so that's just an example. Make sure you're actually legitimately fluent in something if you're going to put it on your resume. Okay. Organizations. Here's examples of things to include. Notice these are all things that you got into when you were in college, right? Do not include your high school organizations. They don't care that you were in chess club in high school, right? The only reason you would include a high school organization that you were a part of is, let's say you continue to be a part of that organization. Maybe now you're a mentor in that organization, or you help run that organization. Then, by all means, include it. But if it's something you stopped doing after you graduated high school, don't put it on your resume. Achievements, awards, these are great things to include, okay? Things like the Dean's List. If you win an award from the MoCPA or the AICPA or whatever the case is, put that on your resume. They like to see those things. If you're on the Dean's List, that means you are focused. You are somebody that works hard and cares about the work that you do. That is going to set you apart from the other applicants that don't have Dean's List listed. Okay? So, always a good thing. And just going back to organizations, if you're a member of like Beta Alpha Psi, definitely want to include that, because a lot of these people that are interviewing you and hiring you are Beta Alpha Psi members, and I know from experience that they will say, oh, you were BAP, I was BAP president. And then you've got an instant connection with them. So including those student organizations is great. I'm sure it's the same with Accounting Club. They see it and they go, oh, you were a part of Accounting Club? I was the president of Accounting Club for 2 semesters. Whatever the case is. So include it. Again, don't include irrelevant or inappropriate topics. Okay? No one cares that you were the hot dog eating contest. I mean, I would care. Pretty impressive, pretty cool. But the employer's not going to care. Awards that you won in high school, they're not going to care about. Okay? I know it was a big achievement in high school, but at this point you're trying to get a job, a professional. You're starting out your career. They're not worried about your high school achievements. Okay? So, grammar and punctuation, be sure you proofread. I cannot stress this enough. You need to be proofreading your own documents. This is why we do the peer review. And I know I said we're not doing peer review for the resumes, because I want you guys to get these reviewed by professionals, right? So, proofread. Edit, make changes, okay? Do not use the word I in your resume. This is a personal but impersonal document, right? It's just like writing a paper at school. You don't use the word I when you're writing a research paper, okay? So don't use it in your resume. Don't use abbreviations like MSU instead of Missouri State University, or You know, if you're don't use BAP. If you're a member of Beta Alpha Psi, just say Beta Alpha Psi. Some of these acronyms are not well known, and then you find yourself having to explain them over and over and over. So just spell it out for them. Okay, it's easier. Make sure you're using consistent and correct punctuation, like hyphens, in dashes, periods, commas, colons, semicolons, etc. So here, some of you may not know what an in dash is. Hyphens versus an in dash, right? A hyphen is used to connect words. Okay. An in dash is used to connect things that are related to each other through distance. So think of it as a substitute for the word through. So an in dash example would be 2016 through 2018, right? Okay, so that's the difference. So make sure you're using those correctly. All right. Language, proper use of verbs. You're going to want to use job-specific verbs. You know, don't say handled money. Say I reconciled my cash drawer daily. Reconciled the cash drawer daily. Something to that effect, okay? You're going to want to use job-specific verbs. Also, when you're actually applying for these jobs, look at the job description. Use words from the job description, okay? Unfortunately, there are a lot of algorithms out there that they run these resumes through that will kick resumes out if they don't have keywords in them. And those keywords are typically found in your job description, okay? So use words from the job description. The most important thing I think on this slide to remember is that you need to use the proper verb tense, okay? When you're describing duties that you're doing currently at your current job, use present tense. When you're describing duties performed in the prior job or the job from the past, use past tense of a verb. Performed, calculated, collected, those types of things. It can get confusing if you are talking about your current job and using past tense, right? They go, wait, do you still do that, or is that something you used to do? Head that off, just use the proper verb tense, okay? I see this a lot, almost every resume that I've went through. I have to correct the verb tense for them. So make sure you're using the proper verb tense, okay? If I see that you haven't used proper verb tense, I know you probably haven't watched this video. And I'm gonna call you out on it. I'll tell you, hey, go back and watch the video. Listen to me talk about verb tense for a minute. Also, use that action verbs handout that I posted to Blackboard. Use that as a reference guide for yourselves, okay? So, style and format. This is my literal resume right here, okay? Changed my contact information, but this is what my resume looks like, okay? You can see it's consistent, it's clean, okay? There's nothing fancy about it. And part of the reason that is because most of the time when you're doing job applications, they ask you to upload a resume, right? Well, you upload it and then you open it up to look at it and it's all jacked up because you've got all this fancy formatting on it. And now the formatting's all screwed up. Keep it simple, right? So smooth, clean, not a lot of crazy formatting in it. Just makes it easy for them to digest, right? It's easy to pick up and look and see what I've done and how long I did it for. What do I know? What can I do? Okay. So you're going to want to fill the entire page. You don't want to overcrowd it. Okay. You can see that mine's a bit crowded. Next time, my intention is next time I go through to edit my resume, I'm going to be removing some of the things that I feel like are less important. Okay. So I'll be taking things out of my resume to kind of clean it up a little bit. My resume is by no means perfect, and that's why I'm showing it to you guys, okay? There are things I could do to make this resume look better. Looking at it right now, I can tell you 3 things off the top of my head I see that I don't like, that I'm going to change as soon as I get a chance, okay? So, be consistent in your use of bolding, italics, and capitalization. If you italicize one job, then italicize all your job titles, right? Make sure, and this is something that's not in my resume, simply because I was a bigger fan of keeping the dates right next to the jobs, but it's something I plan on changing, okay? So most important information is on the left side of the page, less important information is on the right side of the page, okay? Make sure everything is aligned. This is one thing that I see pretty frequently from students when they turn their resumes in, is their dates are all out of alignment and it looks bad. It's something that you look at and you go, oof, that is not nice to look at. Make sure all your alignment is good. You can do that using the tab key on your keyboard if you want to do it the simple way, or you can use your ruler and drag and put things exactly where you want them if you want to do it in a more complicated but probably a more solid way. Okay, so this is just a reminder that your most important is on the left and your least important is on the right. So just like this, where your experience, your job title, the name of the job, and did you work part-time or full-time, that's all on the right-hand side. And then on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side, you've got the location and the date that you were working at. Okay. So that is it for resumes. If you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you have about your resumes. Like I said, my preference is that you guys try to get with the Career Center. Make that your first choice. Okay, don't just turn in a rough draft right now. You haven't even had a chance to talk to the Career Center. Okay, so go ahead, try to get with the Career Center. Like I said, there's no reason you can't send them an email and say, hey, is it okay if I email you a copy of my resume for somebody to review? They're probably going to say, yeah, that's cool. Okay, that's what they're there for. Use them. That's my preference. Please, please, please use the Career Center first, not us. Okay. We will review your resumes if for whatever reason you could not get the Career Center to review your resume. Anna, Lane, or myself will review and critique your resume. All right. So having said that, I will log off of here and talk to you guys later. Thanks.